Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us for our webinar. This is our fifth webinar in the series, and today we have Dr. Manohar Swaminathan from Microsoft Research, and he'll be talking about some accessibility efforts. Before I go further, I just wanted to inform you all that he'll be using a presentation, and the presentation is hosted online at inclusivestem.org/webinar5.pptx. I'll repeat this: inclusivestem.org/webinar5.pptx. Sure. So let me just quickly introduce Dr. Manohar to you. Dr. Manohar Swaminathan is a researcher at Microsoft Research India. His primary interests are in virtual and augmented reality technologies, and he's currently focused on using these and applying these to empower people with visual impairments. His other interests include using IoT and cloud for large-scale societal impact in emerging markets. Dr. Manohar's accomplishments and contributions in career also span across academia and entrepreneurship as well. He was a professor in computer science at IISc, Indian Institute of Science, from 1990 to 2005, and he was a tenure-track faculty at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, 2 years prior to that. He was also a part of the team that invented the computer, and he has received the first Divang Mehta Award for Innovation in IT by the Government of India. He has also co-founded Strand Life Sciences, now currently known Strand. This is just a sneak peek into his accomplishments and contributions. And without any further ado, I'll hand it over to him to walk us through the rest of the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Manohar. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Venkatesh, for that introduction. And thank you again for the opportunity to share our work with this group. I'm very excited, not just about the talk, but hopefully continue to have interactions with many of you. So let me just get started. So the title of my talk is From Accessibility to Empowerment at Microsoft Research. So just a quick overview of Microsoft Research India. It is part of a set of labs worldwide, part of Microsoft, but the research organization is about 25 plus years old, which has its distinct culture. And we have in Bangalore about 40 full-time researchers, all with PhDs, mostly in CS, but some in the humanities. There were 15 engineers and applied scientists, several postdoctoral scholars, and we have a very interesting program where undergraduates come in as pre-doctoral research fellows, 1 or 2 years. About 30 of them every year. Has become a very, very attractive program, very beneficial to both the students and the researchers. And we host lots of interns during the year, 3 to 6 month kind of internships, bachelor's, master's, and PhD from all around the world. So it's a very exciting, energizing environment at Microsoft Research India. There are 4 major areas that we work on. The foundational areas of computer science, machine learning and AI, systems that include programming languages, networking, distributed systems, security, privacy, and so on. And then the group that I am most closely aligned with is the technology for emerging markets, which is to look at all of these technologies and with a specific focus on problems and solutions that are very unique to emerging markets like India. And MSR worldwide, Microsoft Research, has these 3 vectors of how we measure ourselves in terms of impact. One is research impact. Are you doing the best work in your area of research, world class, published in top conferences and journals, recognized as leaders in that field? Or impact the company in terms of the products of Microsoft or services of Microsoft based on your research. And the third component is societal impact. How are we impacting society at scale positively using technology? And in any combination of these 3 is what is our broad mandate at Microsoft Research. The technologies for emerging markets as a broad idea or a spectrum of interest, starting from understanding existing technologies, how it is being used in developing communities. We also look at the problems that are there and try design and build new solutions, evaluate technology and systems, with a focus on contributing to the socio-economic development. And we collaborate widely with many developmental organizations, governments, academics, and industry for scaling up our impact. My brief bio, I think Venkatesh has mentioned this. I will just mention that I have been at Microsoft Research only since December of 2015, and it's been an exciting time from then and even before. So let me go to my primary area of interest when I joined Microsoft Research, and in my academic career was graphics, virtual reality. So let me take a few minutes to convey what I believe is virtual reality. Virtual reality is really about realistic simulations of all sensory perceptions to create an illusion of reality. So if you look at our key senses, vision, hearing, touch, also called as haptics, smell and taste, and the very important sense which is usually left out in our school because we are told we have five senses. Actually, we have a very important sixth sense. This is not the sixth sense in the movie or extrasensory perception. This is a physical sensation which is called proprioception. Um, Let me take a minute to explain what that is, because it's extremely important to understand that this is a whole body sense. A brief definition of it will be a sense of the relative position of our body parts. When I am on a staircase with one foot coming down, I know I am out of balance. My body knows it is not part of any particular of the other senses. With my eyes closed or with no vision, I know exactly where all my body parts are. So it's a very powerful sense which has to be exploited, which we use on a every minute by minute basis in our real life. So virtual reality, back again, is how can I replace reality with artificially generated sensory inputs to the human. So this said human believes that he or she is part of reality. There is a term called suspension of disbelief, which is used in theater and drama and movies, which basically says that the participant knows that what is happening is really not real, but because of the engagement and interest in the medium, he is willing to suspend this disbelief and be part of, play along. Really, that's what it means. So, can I replace the real world with a set of sensory inputs that create an illusion of reality? That's if you achieve it higher and higher fidelity, then you believe or you state that this virtual reality system enhances your presence in this simulated world. Um, Mixed reality, on the other hand, is a combination of partly real world senses coming in and partly synthetically generated virtual sensations. The combination gives you this new buzzword and technology which has made considerable progress in the last few years, which is called mixed reality. The Microsoft HoloLens is the leading device and the system that presents mixed reality, though there are many other solutions being developed as we speak. So virtual reality, when I started working on, the key aspect that I wanted to focus was on what is called spatial sound or 3D sound. Um, for those of you not familiar with it, let me try and play this audio. If you're hearing with standard headphones, make sure your left and right headphones are in the right place. Let me play this out and then I will come back and talk about it like a few minutes, a couple of minutes, I think. Let me play it now. This is the audio recording, which is available on the internet. And if you look at this presentation, you will get the link so you could go back and listen to this again. So let me play this. So it's going to the web. Just give me a minute. Yeah, it's about 3-4 minutes, but let me play it for a few minutes and then stop it. Hello there. How are you? Yes. You are here for the virtual website.
Hey Manohar, we actually cannot hear any of the 3D audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me stop it. I think it probably plays only of my. Okay. So what I suggest is the link is present. If you search for even 3D barber haircut, you will find it on YouTube with a standard headphone. If you play it, you will see a very eerie sensation of the scissors right on top of your head going around very close to your ears, and this barber standing right behind you moving back and forth, the music coming from some other directions, a very realistic soundscape of what sounds like a real barbershop. Okay, if you modulo the language, which seems like some Spanish or something. So I recommend that you after the talk, experience this virtual haircut. So what is 3D sound? Um, it's essentially using signal processing computational techniques to simulate the presence of a sound source in any point in space. So all of us can immediately kind of recognize where any particular sound source is coming from. We know the direction from which a sound is coming up, whether it is near or far. So spatial audio or 3D sound is the ability to take any sound source and place it in arbitrary 3D locations around the listener. And this allows me to create virtual soundscapes that mimic reality. So essentially, of the 5, 6 senses we talked about, graphics is the primarily used sensation in virtual reality because it is directed at sighted people. And there the focus is on very realistic visual simulation, which means you generate frames of video at very high frame rate with very high fidelity in the way objects are displayed and change based on the position of the viewer. As the person moves, the environment changes visually as it would in real life. The more realistically it changes, you believe you are in a real world. So visual simulation is to mimic what eye normally sees in the real world at the same fidelity. Oral simulation is analogous, where I want to present to you the sound field as if you are in that situation in the real world. To do that, there is some technical, you can look it up. There is some transformation called head related transfer function, which takes care of two of the fundamental properties of human hearing. We have 2 ears. It's called binaural hearing. So sound from any source takes different time to reach the left ear as opposed to the right ear. And this time difference, the brain is able to decipher and say, where is this sound source from, most of the time with very good accuracies. The second, depending on the frequency content of the sound, different frequencies get attenuated differently based on by our head, our shoulders, the shape of the ears, the shape of the head, the shirt you are wearing. All of these modify the spectral content of the source. These two are captured as a mathematical transform and applied to the sound source, and the result is that when you hear it using normal headphones, which is the key, we do not need surround speakers or 7/8 speakers, which is the alternate technology of entertainment acoustics, where you want 7:1 speaker, 9:16 speakers. This one, simple headphones, but computation these days can now be done on a good smartphone. The spatial audio transformations are easy to compute on a cell phone, which makes this commodity. Windows has a built-in library for spatial audio, for instance, and there are open source spatial audio libraries. So anyone can build applications. And I'm sure many of you would have looked at applications which have spatial audio. I'll come to that in a minute. So this is spatial audio technology. And just to recall, one of the hearing is the next highest bandwidth sensation if you take out vision. And the other distinction we need to keep in mind is that even though we have touch, smell, and taste and proprioception, these are near senses as opposed to vision and hearing, which are far senses. They developed evolutionarily to keep our ancestors safe and well fed. You need to know when your prey is approaching much before it gets to you, which means you need to know where it is coming from. And sound evolved as a 360-degree sensation to alert you to approaching threat or approaching prey. You need to know when things that you can eat are approaching, which if you miss it, you will starve. And so we have a built-in evolutionary equipment in the brain, which is extremely good in identifying where and from what kind of source a sound is arriving at. And vision is the far sense with a lot more focus. So hearing alerts you and vision focuses on that object to understand what it is. Given that a person has vision impairment, then the strongest far sense is hearing. And so my focus is to say how best we can use this powerful machinery in every one of our heads to improve the experience across the spectrum. Obviously, touch is another sensation which we can develop and use effectively. And you would have heard of many haptic interfaces. The other term is force feedback devices. Braille is an example. Braille displays all use this sense of touch. There are efforts to also convey more abstract information through touch. For example, haptic maps, haptic surfaces to understand shapes. But my research, I'm mostly focusing on hearing with the assumption that adding haptics to that will only make it better. And again, there are research problems to be solved when you have multimodal interfaces for conveying this reality. But most of our work currently focuses on spatial audio and how best we can exploit it. So the move from my broad interest in virtual reality to accessibility happened almost by accident about nearly 2 years ago when Vidya, some of you may know, she finished her master's from IIIT Bangalore. She approached me for a summer project in 2016. And so I suggested, I was thinking about games and spatial audio at that point. So I said, why don't you find out what kind of 3D sound games are available for the blind? And she did a survey, talked to a lot of visually impaired people about what kind of games they play, why do they play, what games they want to play, what games they are unable to play, so on and so forth. The accessibility of gaming was one of the projects that Vidya did. That got me interested even more. And very soon I got in touch with Venkatesh, who was an intern in IDC Hyderabad. And this interest in applying spatial audio to accessibility problems prompted me, and Venkatesh was interested. So he moved in as an intern first, and then he became a research fellow. And one of his work, which is not directly relevant to this talk, but is very interesting and useful to this community, is the project called Code Talk, which is to make programming environments like Visual Studio a lot more productively accessible to visually impaired people. So programmers currently use screen readers, but there is lots of limitations, and I recommend that if you have not looked at this before, look at Code Talk. It is open sourced. We have been inviting people to use it, help us with improving the code, etc. The next project that Venkatesh has spent time is what is called Codescape, which is related to spatial audio, where we are hoping to provide a soundscape or a spatial sound based input of all the information that is present in a visual IDE. Sighted people have huge amounts of information that are available to them on the screen. So our challenge is to say, how can I bring out all of this information in a non-linear way, as opposed to just a screen reader going through line by line? Can I add and exploit the spatial hearing capability that all of us have to increase the bandwidth between the system and the programmer? Again, I won't talk more about it, just to connect it with our spatial audio work. But let me move on to the broader, let me say, the design or the research theme that I'm pursuing. It's called Project AVARE, which stands for Audio-augmented, Virtual and Real Environments. So the key abstraction is, as we have talked about, the world is perceived through the senses, which is reality, and virtual reality attempts to replace some or all of these sensory inputs with synthetically generated sensations. Combination is mixed reality. The currently very hot areas of machine learning and AI, they are attempting to extract information about reality using devices like video cameras and other sensors, and to extract information, understanding about the world around them. And these technologies can be used to extract and present this information to people with vision impairments. But the major challenge that is yet to be solved is, how do I convey this complex, rich information source around us on an everyday basis in a systematic way where the person is in charge of extracting the relevant information that is of interest at that moment, and not to flood a whole set of information to the user. So this is the broader goal, but the more interesting thing is, if I can go back and forth between the virtual and real, where I train or experience spatial audio and how to interact with virtual worlds using spatial audio in a simulated environment. And the hope is the skill sets and the confidence you have gained in the virtual world can then be transferred to the real world, where a similar audio interface is present. This is a long-range goal. Let me just explain a couple of projects which are not from Microsoft Research India, but from the broader Microsoft. One of the applications is called Soundscape. This is an iOS app from Microsoft. Unfortunately, it doesn't yet, is not yet available in Android, but this is to allow for VIPs to walk around using just a smartphone, use map information to tell them about entities around them using spatial audio. So if you're walking on a street, the building from your left and right will be announced from their physical location. And as you walk, these announcements will recede or approach as you go near, or go away or near these buildings. And so if you use them continuously, you get a sense of orientation, a sense of what are all the interesting entities around you, without having to ask a sighted bystander every time, what is this, where am I, etc. The hope is this will allow for independent moving around of blind people, if you have a smartphone with the internet connectivity and the map information. The other app, which is also very interesting and a very new release from Microsoft, is an iOS app called Seeing AI. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. This is primarily using machine learning and AI, extract information from images photographed by the camera on the smartphone, and to present information to the user. So let me just spend more time on how I intend to take this forward. So I believe that we need to move from primarily enabling people to access technologies to empower them to become masters of the technologies and be extremely productive in whichever direction you want to be. But my focus is that we want to do this through play and playfulness. Broadly, we are humans because we love playing. And playing is essentially one of the key characteristics of being human. Playing and learning, these two define humanity. And I believe people without vision should not be excluded from play, enjoyment, having fun, entertaining themselves with all the technologies that sighted people are able to and use. So the immediate project that we have embarked about a few months ago is what is called video games for the vision impaired. There are many games that are built for people without vision. I don't know if I have the list. I thought I put the list somewhere, but it's missing. Let me mention that here. So when Vidya did the survey, we looked at games, 3D games, which are also available on desktops, PCs, and mobile phones. There are games like The Blind Legend, the Dark Side, I forget the name, Ear Monsters. There's several of them. There's actually Audio Sound Hub, which is a collection of games, console games that are available for purely audio games. This Blind Side is the other game. Okay, so the point is, these are good, very good for enabling blind people to play games, but I would want them to be part of the larger gaming community that plays mainstream video games. There are so many games that are exciting across the spectrum, from driving games to strategy games to first person, whatever, attack, defend, invade space colony, or start in Stone Age, dig up resources, build slowly to historic progression, have other enemies who are building their own empires. So there are many games which huge number of people play around the world. Currently, almost all of them are non-inclusive. Um, Even just the text part of these games is not easily accessible to screen readers. So we have a very large challenge, but we believe that we need to start from somewhere. And so we're starting with video games, but using spatial audio to convey this information to the users. So how do we do this? We have a set of user interface tools which allow the user to selectively get information about the world. So I want to explore an environment and maybe pick up a magic sword. What I need to know is, from where I am, I need to know what are all the interesting objects in front of me. So we have a tool which will extract this information and then use spatial audio to speak out the names of these objects, maybe the natural sounds these objects make located at where these objects are located. And we allow tools that will allow you to select this object and also reach them by moving towards them using audio beacons. So you could also orient yourself. We have a tool called the North Horn. When you are in an unknown world, you want to position yourself to know where you are. There is a constant beacon which you can play, which plays from the true north position. Or you could anchor some object in the environment which constantly emits a beep, which lets you know where you are with respect to that object. So you explore the world by sequentially interacting with it, finding information about it, and moving forward. So we have built some games. We have invited VIPs to play the game, to give us inputs about what works, what does not work, and we are constantly doing this iterative design to improve our understanding of how we can use spatial audio to engage, make these games extremely engaging and entertaining. And the key idea is that in not so distant future, we want both sighted and vision impaired people playing the same games together. and enjoying and sharing this experience. That's really where we want to go. And the other two domains, virtual reality and mixed reality, are also completely beyond access to vision impaired folks at this point. Most of these are developed with primary focus on high definition graphics, high speed graphics, and lots of glitch that is associated with graphics rendering. But because spatial audio is now commodity and the computational requirements of synthesizing a soundscape is much lower than graphics, I believe these interactive media can be brought within the reach of people with vision impairments. And that's where we are going primarily. And very recently, we have started expanding our view from the vision impairments to people with other kinds of impairments, broadening our look at accessibility to include the spectrum of impairments ranging from physical, cognitive to motor impairments. So one of the other technologies that has come from Microsoft and widely available in other platforms is the gaze controlled API. Your eye gaze can be tracked by a tracking device that is attached to the monitor, which allows people who have lost motor control to use their eyes to control computing. And there again, we want to create games that people can play with their eyes. So these are some of the plans that we have to bring in people with range of impairments, to empower them to engage and play and have fun with technology. And these skills that they pick up, we are very sure will be applied elsewhere in their lives. And as part of this, we are constantly trying to invite and include people with these impairments to understand really what is it that they want to do. And so I really invite people on this program and others who you are in touch with to get in touch with me and explore how we can benefit from your inputs. Okay. What I will just do in the next 10 minutes or less actually is to just talk broader, taking a step back about inclusive design and why companies like Microsoft are increasingly focusing on inclusive design. Essentially, inclusive design is slightly different from universal design, which says any object or design should be available to everyone on the planet, which is too ambitious. But inclusive design says expand participation of as many people as possible in anything you build right from the start of the project, not as a post facto attempt to fix things to make it accessible to a few other people. And this is another reason why, especially Microsoft has been looking at diversity and inclusion as two sides of the same coin. We believe that diversity of the people that are working for Microsoft, diversity of people who use Microsoft products adds value to everyone. So diversity in terms of age, gender, abilities, all of them are very critical to make both the products and the company successful, but users of these products to benefit and larger number of people to benefit from these technologies. And inclusive design is a philosophy of starting from scratch about working with this understanding that any decision we take, if you're not cognizant of it, will exclude lots of people because of our personal biases. So the first step is to recognize exclusion. When we start solving problem, the first question is to ask, whom are we excluding from whatever we are trying to do? And push this question as much as possible to understand that we are including as many end users as possible in whatever we are trying to do. And as we try to do these, the need to include actually bring in challenges, and these challenges are solved, it makes the product way better for everybody else. So a simple example of what happens when we look for inclusion is there are doors which are equipped with a switch which is meant originally for people using wheelchairs who press the button and then the door opens, the wheelchair goes in. But you will find a lot of people who are carrying two handfuls of some stuff. uh, they don't have a hand free, so they just bump against the switch and open the door. So by focusing originally on wheelchair users, you have benefited a much larger number of people in using the same technology. So the understanding is that impairments are across the spectrum, and these are neither permanent or unique. Every one of us will have impairments at various stages of our life in one or other forms, physical or cognitive, and designing for inclusion benefits everyone. And the other point is that we need to learn from diversity as part of inclusive design, and we need to start by solving it for one person, but expand the solution to as many people as possible, understanding the factor that we may be biased in our idea of what is easy, what is hard, and go forward with the design. So let me stop with the invitation that certainly would want participation from all of you to improve what we are doing, to make sure we are solving problems that are worthwhile, and to have fun with the games that we intend to build and continuing to build. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. I really look forward to questions over chat. Thank you. Karthik, are you there?
Yeah. Okay. Hey guys. So basically, you can either type in your questions on the chat window, or you can just unmute yourself and ask questions. Okay. We have someone who wants to ask a question.
Please go ahead.
Hi, hi. This is Manik from Mindtree Foundation, Bangalore. We are developing technology solutions, assistive technology solutions for visually impaired children. And Aravind Eye hospitals, through Aravind Eye hospitals, they are promoting these solutions. So one of the need is that, we are working on a solution that reads a printed book to the ears of visually impaired school children. Okay.
Yeah.
So the user story is very simple, that I am a 7th standard child studying in a rural government school. I walk into a library, I ask a librarian to set it up. So he sets it up and then he goes. After that, I continue to read any printed book where there is no audio book or where there is no braille books are available.
Sure.
So this solution is being made and it is working fine with the existing OCR and TTS engines. It reads English very well. Now we are working on Tamil and Kannada and other Indian languages also. So we need one help actually to this forum or to Mr. Manohar, is that we want to read the mathematical expressions. Because of this problem, these children are not able to continue their science education after 7th or 8th standard. They slip down to art stream. So we actually have tried with IIITB in Bangalore. Okay, and we are trying with many other institutions also, but this particular problem of making a mathematical expressions
Good,
we need some
Manik.
help from you actually. Yeah,
Absolutely, and it's very much of a coincidence, and maybe not. Venkatesh, in his master's or BTech thesis at IIIT Hyderabad, one of the projects, one main thing he was looking at, he can talk to you offline, is about mathematical expressions, how to use audio stresses to distinguish between, say, a superscript and a subscript. That work we haven't continued here, but initially we were hoping that spatial audio will also be very useful to give the stresses, but whatever work Venkatesh has done is actually very useful as it is. So offline, Venkatesh, you should get in touch with him. The second part, which is very relevant, is going forward, Vidya is now a research fellow in Microsoft Research, and
Okay.
she's just starting, but she was already started non-profit called the Vision
Vision
Empower.
Empower.
Vision Empower.
Vision Empower.
And
one sec. We
I'm
hear,
getting an echo.
yeah, we hear a lot of echo. We hear a lot of disturbance. Can somebody
Manix,
please?
yeah,
Oh,
Manix,
wow.
if you can mute yourself.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I think mute would help.
Okay. We're good.
Good, excellent. So the question, Manix, is Venkatesh is one. So Vidya, she started Vision Empower Trust about a year ago with a partner, and their focus is STEM education for blind children in schools. And she's focusing on 5th grade, but her focus is on getting textbooks that are available, etc. But I believe the point you bring up of math, how do they read math, is very important to us. And we are starting again, is again very early stages. So computational thinking is what Vidya will focus on, how to convey computational thinking, not mathematics, but I'm just sharing with you that's the focus we are beginning to look at for Vidya. And we will be in touch, Manix. So after you have a conversation with Venkatesh, be in touch with me, and I would like to engage with you to see where you are working and how we can engage with you going forward. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Karthik, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, hi, Manohar sir. This is Akashdeep from IIT Delhi. So I have, basically I'm a low vision candidate. So while you was mentioning about the gaze control gaming for people with SSML, so I was one idea strikes to my mind. Is it possible that my lot of time goes in tracking the mouse? Okay, when I'm surfing the web, so it's take a lot of time in tracking the mouse. So is it possible where I'm looking at the screen, I can find my mouse at the same point and just like click on the link?
So are you saying you want to control the mouse cursor with your
With the
eye?
gaze. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I didn't want to again digress to that. That's the other project where we are looking at how can we use gaze control technology, which is primarily used for people with good vision but other impairments, to people who have vision impairments also, including the blind. It may sound contradictory, but depending on the onset of blindness, nature of blindness, some blind people have control of their eyes, but at a minimum they have control of their head and the head position, right? So one of the projects we are trying out is how can I use a rough estimate, a rough position of the head and the quote gaze of the person to do interesting things. So again, we will be in touch. If you can just send me a mail, that will allow me to keep in touch with you and share with you what we are doing. And more importantly, I want to understand the problem that you want to solve with your eye gaze, right? So I will need to spend time with you. I really appreciate the question, and please send me mail.
Okay, so thank you, sir. I have one more question.
Sure.
Like when you mentioned about this virtual haircut, so I got the idea. Is it possible? Can it provide so much precision that I can provide the distinction between the equilateral isoscale and the right angle triangle to a blind person by just audio specialization?
So there is a lot of research on our resolution of the source of audio, which varies vertically and horizontally. So in the horizontal plane, we have much better resolution, meaning the better is roughly about 8 to 6 to 8 degrees of resolution, which means if two objects are closer than that, you will not be able to distinguish. But if they are further apart than about 10 degrees, you'll be able to point to where one object is, where the next object is. And on the vertical direction, it is a little worse. Again, if you look back at evolution, that's the reason why we need horizontal resolution of audio much better than vertical. But to your question, it is an interesting idea to allow or to let the person play with the audio. Maybe this right angle triangle can be at the far distance, right? So you have a large triangle. See, the advantage when we are playing purely with audio is we are no longer constrained by the screen size,
Yes.
right? The whole hemisphere is my screen. So I can draw things as large as I want, correct?
Yes.
So I could, let's say, trace sound source along the horizontal line, at some point vertically go up, but take a different tone. I'm just thinking aloud. And when it reaches the top vertex, again, it takes a different pitch and comes back to the original one, right? And if I control the speed of this flow of this beam, the beep, hopefully I can convey along with other mechanisms, right? You will show a physical piece of a right angle, and then, yeah, so it is definitely possible to use spatial audio. And this is one of the problems we are attempting to solve in our gaming interface. Suppose I'm entering a room. I want to know how large this room is. One is to say it is 30 feet long, and it's very abstract. I want to have a sense of the size of the room, right? So one of the experiments we did was exactly like what I described. There is an audio beacon which rapidly goes along the bottom of the floor all the way to the end, climbs up to the roof, comes back to the back, and goes round and round. If I hear this, I can see as it goes away from me, if it's a large wall, it'll lose its intensity also. And when it comes back, Doppler effect will also show up, and I can get a sense of the size of the wall. And so we are experimenting with these things. Like, I can say there's a table in front of me, but if I only know it's the table at the center of gravity, I don't know it's a large table, a small table. So volume extent of objects, how to communicate through audio is another research problem. Surface extents, another problem. So you have hit on very key research problems that we are grappling with, and you are giving a nice context to it. How do I teach shapes to children with audio? These two connect very nicely. Thank you. Again, each of you, please send me mail so that I am not taking notes. So I would want to, so you have two questions from IIT Delhi, I remember, but please send me mail.
Yeah, so you mentioned about the horizontal and the vertical resolution. Is it what is the resolution in the elevation angle?
Elevation is worse, 15 degrees. So there are lots of research papers done 30, 40 years ago. Army, US Army research, I mean, naval research did lots of work in the 80s, 90s on spatial audio. But that time, the technology was not advanced enough in terms of the computation of spatial audio that they would do all the experiments with physical speakers. So if I want to understand spatial resolution, they'll keep physical speakers at 10 degrees and make one of the speakers beep and ask subjects which one was it, etc. Right? You get the idea. But the four core solutions or core understanding of the limitations and the resolutions are all in these papers. I'll send you the details of the paper. I don't have the numbers offhand, but I will point you to these references.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
May I ask a question?
Go for
Can
it.
you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Sonal from Cambridge, Massachusetts. First of all, thank you very much for such an inspiring and very thorough talk that I may have so many questions, but I learned a lot. Learned a lot, so thank you so much. And so I will just ask only one or two questions. One question to Professor Swaminathan. If you follow this iSTEM folks, they are doing amazing webinars every 2 weeks. And yours is, I think I would consider very, very educational for someone like me. And I also relate your work with the last webinar was by iData team. If you have heard about them, and I would highly recommend if you can see connection of your work with hearing, that you are developing all these video games and all these, that these eye data folks are developing tools for doing astronomy for visually impaired and blind.
I heard about it from Venkatesh. I will connect with them. Yeah, thank you.
So I consider, you have a very strong tie, that your research is very inspiring and connecting. So
sure. Thank you.
That's one thing. And so with now that Vidya joining your team and her interest in STEM, and so it's very, very inspiring. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sunil.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, looks like that's pretty much it.
Good. Yep.
Cool.
So thank you very much, Karthik and Venkatesh. I enjoyed this, and I look forward to all of you, even those who have not had questions at this point. If you think of any, please be in touch. I'll really would be happy to connect and respond.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. It was really, really amazing. As someone said, this was really educational. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karthik. Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, everyone. Be in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.